everybody. It's so good to see you. Thank you for being here. I want to welcome you to Loft, and let me share just really some ideas of where the Loft is right now, how we got started. And really the Loft started in Luxembourg about 2 years ago, and this is now a joint venture with ECIS, and we are thrilled to have this collaboration. The Loft really has 4 big objectives, and I want you to think about which one resonates with you the most. Okay, so the first one, are you ready? Is the idea that we're providing resources. We like to keep creating sustainable educational practices, and is this why you're here at the Loft? Or is it because the connection and the networking that we're able to provide? Or is it because of the insights that we're able to really share from our different guest speakers? Or are you here because we love the idea of elevating the voices of the International School Network? So right now, think of which number resonated with you the most in terms of one of our objectives at the Loft. And on the count of 3, can you put that number in the chat, please? 1, 2, 3. Please put that number in the chat. We have 4, 3, 1, 2. We have a big range, a few 3s about really those unique insights. A 2 and a 4. Thank you. Lovely. Thank you. So we really have quite a spread there. Thank you for sharing what resonated with you with our objectives. One thing I love about the Loft is that there's 3, I would say, pillars of how we facilitate. The first is the idea that we want to start building community. And I always refer to that at the heart. That if you see somebody right now in this virtual learning environment, say hello, connect, or if you're in a breakout room and you say, you know what, this woman, Vicky, said something really insightful, ask for her email address and connect with her. The other idea is that the presenters, they provide you those provocations, those insights, and really a new strategy perhaps that you can then apply, and that application is referred to as our hands, our takeaway. And for today, we really would like you to share your takeaways actually on this slide deck. So you're going to see in the chat right now a slide deck. As you are going through this hour with Chad, if there's something that resonates, put it on the slide deck, share with everyone, and I'll be sharing this with everyone who registered. Can you fill in more than one box? Absolutely. We really want to know what resonated with you as Chad is sharing. Our virtual protocols, like in most virtual, we'll be using the chat for questions. I'll be sharing them with Chad during the course of the facilitation. Join us on social media as well. There's our hashtag. And in terms of engagement, we'll be doing mute for the larger group. And then for the breakout session, obviously unmute, and please for the breakout session, could you put your camera on? During the big session, if you prefer not to, but sometimes in a smaller group, it's really nice to see the individual and to see their eyes. So please, what's coming up on the Loft? These are our speakers so far, and we're thrilled, and we're always looking for, if you have an idea that you want to share, contact me at nancy@ecs.org. And we'd love to know, because we provide a platform to elevate voices and different perspectives. So please, if you have something you want to share, let me know. And I always like to have a variety of guests come on the Loft. So coming up next is John Mickton, and he will be talking about AI. And anybody who knows John, he's brilliant in what he does, and also a man with such sincerity and integrity. So this session is something not to miss. And then we have Dr. Helen Kelly. She already had one session about well-being. You did not have to read the book in order to be part of this session. Oops, let's go back. And she's talking about dealing with burnout before it happened, looking at our own well-being, and also the idea of the sustainability of well-being within our community. And now I'm going to pass it on to Chad. But I do want to say, when I wrote to Chad initially asking if he would be a guest, it was without hesitation. He said yes immediately. Chad, besides he is the primary principal at Vienna International School. He is also chair of the Inclusive Education Special Interest Group for ECIS. You can also find information about him on our special interest page on the ECIS website. And he is truly just, besides being a kind person, He is a man that has such expertise and experience. So I'm thrilled that he's able to be here for today. So I'm now going to stop share. And this is where we do a virtual welcome to Chad. Everybody, hands up, hands up. Woo, woo. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Chad. And I'm now going to pass it on to you. So thank you, Chad, for being here.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for the energy, as always. If you haven't met Nancy, she's like this all the time, just a bundle of joy. And thank you for being the co-host. It's nice to see everybody and to see where everyone's coming from. I've done a few workshops with ECIS on developing student support teams or inclusive systems, and just really kind of talking about the journey that we've taken as a school. I'm principal at Vienna International School. Before I was principal, it was my third year as principal, but before this, I was head of learning support and also had a learning support at an international school in China. And then before that, I was a special education teacher for a couple of years in Indianapolis. I taught students with from mild to profound disabilities. So I kind of have an all-encompassing, experience with students with needs. So I just want to kind of share some intentions for this session. I think as Nancy was saying, this is, a casual session. This is hopefully you're going to, pick something, at least one thing that you can take away from this and that you can bring back to your school or to your own professional practice. So just keep an open mind, be reflective, make sure to ask questions in the chat. Nancy will help me out with that. So if you have some questions that are coming up, at any point, put them in, and she might say, stop and say, oh, Chad, can you answer this? But also I want to share is that you can feel free to respond as well. So I'm not the only expert. We have all different areas of expertise in this room, and we're all different areas of our journey with our schools, with our inclusive systems. And so it's just thinking about, like, if you are like, oh, I've done something really great with this, or I've got a great response, don't hesitate to respond as well. And so, as Nancy said, this is about supporting each other and building connections. And so one of the big kickoffs to our journey as a school was when I went to my first ECIS conference. And I was, the group was led by Chris Parakis, who's in here. And I went with the PYP coordinator and two teachers from the team. And we kind of brought, like, as you would go to a conference, you kind of go in with, like, here's my problem that I'm trying to fix. What can I do? And so she really helped us kind of navigate where we wanted to go and really gave us that push that we needed to say, you can make change at your school. And it's just about, like, connecting, figuring out who you can meet that has that shared vision and who can help you build that momentum with your school. And she really helped us do that. And so I think that's what the beauty of these type of workshops is to reach out to somebody. If someone gives you a good response, just say, hey, what's your email address? And let's connect. And so today I kind of have a 3 kind of part agenda. First, I'll kind of share those kind of journey that we've taken as a school, because I really think that as international educators, our schools, look and feel so different, but they're also so similar. We got that real weird dichotomy between different international schools, but we can really learn from each other's failures. And so I want to share some of those with you so that you can help take your programs forward. And so MTSS might be new to you, it might not be new. So I did want to hit that with an overview and just kind of share what does that look like at our school. And then along the way, I want to try to give you some practical takeaways, like, oh, I could do this with a whole staff workshop, or, oh, I could do this with a group of teachers that we really want to focus on a particular student that we're all working with. And then at the end too, I'm always kind of thinking about how can I build, as with my principal hat on, but how can I build capacity, how can I create those opportunities where teachers are feeling like they're professionally growing, that they have agency and ownership over their classroom, over how they support their students. And so I'll just kind of talk to you about some things that we've been implementing over the past couple of years, and kind of where those are going now, and how they're kind of taking on a life of their own, which has been really nice. This is an activity that I will do for like a breakout session, but I just wanted to share, like do a pre-show. So it's called the culture tree. And so this is an activity that you could do with a grade level. This is an activity you could do with a whole school. But I just want you to get your minds thinking about, where are you at in your journey? What are your strengths as a school with MTSS? What, are you feeling like keeps you rooted as a school? Is it that everyone has very similar beliefs? Maybe we all value trying to support students with needs. And then that tree chunk is, what's already going well? What are we feeling confident doing? The branches are, what are we developing? What's important to us? What are we trying to get some momentum on moving forward? And then the leaves are kind of, what are our hopes? What are our next steps? And so I'll make a breakout group later, but I just wanted to put those questions out there now so you can kind of think about those as we go through the presentation. Just so our journey at VIS, we've got 1,400 students, and we've really grown. So this is my 9th year at the school. And as I said, I was head of the learning support team. And at the beginning, we were only 3. There was only 3 of us, and we were only supporting students on individual learning plans. And so we had about 16 to 18 students on our caseload in the total primary school. So it was pretty clear that we were missing a large proportion of students, with having, about 550 students in the primary school. 16 just doesn't really, match up statistically. So we kind of knew that we needed to dig in and kind of figure out, how can we support a wider range of students? And this led to kind of a journey to figure out those kind of key questions, but also to putting in a large proposal to building a student support center. And so I just wanted to show, because we always want to know, what do other international schools look like? What do their student support spaces look like? And this was my team and I, we were like, what do we want? We want to create a space that's totally usable, like you can write on all of the walls. So we created these like cubicles where you could still see in, but a child could go and have their own time if they needed to, with couches, different types of chairs or seat cushions, everything basically like it's just comfortable. So students could go anywhere, they could have any different type of seats. But this was a really cool project because the whole team, we literally designed this from the beginning of the phase to the end, picking out the type of floor that we wanted, the type of walls, the type of lighting. That we have different types of lighting where you can actually change the function over different areas, and because lighting can have a real impact on learning, but focus, especially for young boys. So there's a research behind that, which is really interesting. So I just wanted to share, what does our space look like? We also have a sensory room that has like a little trapeze and stuff in the middle where you could put different swings, and that's where occupational therapists work most of the time, but students also have like sensory passes where they can go down during the day. And so kind of the next section of showing you what some of our spaces look like is when I was thinking about just how can I support other teachers, other educators, other school leaders on how to kind of build, productive and effective systems for supporting students with needs. I really think that this is an important infographic. It's just a reminder about how many decisions teachers are making every single day. We're making 1,500 decisions a day, which is absolutely crazy. I forget what book it is, but it talks about like quick decisions and long decisions, and we only have so much capacity for real long decisions. And so we're making these really quick reactive decisions. And so when thinking about the journey that we were going to take, I was really thinking like, we can't be reactive about this. We have to realize that we have to be proactive and really think long term about how we're trying to support a population of students that we've been missing out on. And so kind of what we had in place was we did have a referral system in place. We had what we called child study meetings. And that's really just when you're kind of at that end point where you're like, all right, we're already referring to learning support or special education. So you're having kind of an intensive conversation, and we had counseling for referral. So it kind of stopped there. And so we knew that students were obviously missing through the cracks. We didn't have any preventative intervention type support going on. And it's because we weren't really using our whole school data the best that we could. We were really relying on the referrer. And so those students really started to stand out, third, fourth, fifth grade, if they're coming from multilingual backgrounds and they've been at your school since your early childhood, those are the age groups that the students start to pop out with referrals. And so like second, first grade, kindergarten, we're not able to support that at that time. We didn't have an early intervention program, and so we knew that this is a reason we're getting all these referrals third, fourth, fifth grade is because we don't have an early intervention program. And so we wanted to start thinking about how can we collaborate, share strategies with each other. And so we really had this light bulb moment when we started to finally like organize and triangulate some of our external and internal learning information. And it was really clear, the students that were on ILPs were where we expected them, but then we had 10 to 15 students per grade level that we were really missing out on, that we could absolutely provide some type of literacy, writing, math intervention, social emotional intervention for. And so kind of a solution that we knew immediately that we wanted to start kind of developing was some type of student support meetings. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but just thinking about how can we create action plans to support students at different levels. So not just at the high end, but how can we support students that, are just kind of falling backwards, and how can we give them that kind of boost before they fall too far behind. And so, as I said, like the first approach that we were taking just with the referrals and the child study meetings, I mean, there's pros to that. I mean, you're having rich discussions about students that have high needs. Those are longer meetings. You're figuring out what are the goals we want to work on for this year. But the drawbacks to it is it was quite reactive. It's only those students, what if you're a quiet student and you're just kind of get by and you've got, really good coping skills, then you're just going to be later on before you get referred, right? We've all kind of experienced those type of students. And so this approach is really dependent on who's referring. And we also know, that some teachers don't refer, they don't want to refer, they don't refer until the very end of the school year. So that approach just wasn't really working. And so we tried a second approach. The second approach was what we call the fishbowl. And so the fishbowl, I was like, all right, we're going to have this like 2 to 3 times a year. And this is going to be kind of a discussion group of student, like a grade 2 team that's working with, and that includes, your specialist teachers, your assistants, your ELA, learning support team. But basically you put a student in the middle, not physically, but you put the student in the middle to talk about, and then you kind of develop a protocol of how you talk about that student. And I'll show you an example later. But it was a great start because it started to develop collaborative dialogue, and you started to see, like the PE, that student's doing really well, and that PE teacher's got really great strategies that work for that student. And so it really initially got great feedback from teachers, because they were like, oh, this is a great way I can learn from other teachers, and then I can go back to that teacher that really good strategy later on and ask them about it. but it ended up being what I would say is more reactive too, because the students that were coming forth that the teachers were putting up, it was mostly behavior related, and it not just, like, I was hoping to have a little bit more of a balance, not just behavior. Let's talk about social emotional, let's talk about academics as well. So it was a difficult situation. It was good to talk about it, come up with strategies so people could walk away. But in terms of actually like coming up with actions, like this is where we want to get this child to, and this is how we're going to monitor their progress until we meet again, that part was not included in this process. And so that's kind of what was one of the pitfalls of this approach. But if that's where you're at with your school, I would say it's still a good start, because sometimes with MTSS and inclusion, there's such big broad topics and everyone's coming in at it with a different understanding. Maybe they had that in their teacher training program, maybe they didn't, maybe they're reading different resources. And so that fishbowl approach is kind of a nice way to kind of I would say scaffold your approach to developing your system for MTSS. And so this was an activity that I would do for the fishbowl. Was that everybody that was sitting around the fishbowl, the teachers would get a gingerbread man, and they would write on the front. It had to be nameless, because we're not naming and shaming students in this fishbowl. I make that really clear. You could come up with a creative name if you wanted to, but you could put down the child's age, and then on the front side, you'd have to put some strengths, 3 strengths. What does that child do really well? And that could be anything. And then 3 challenges on the back. And I will tell you, the hardest part for teachers was to put the strengths. So that one student that they just could not get through, the hardest thing was to come up with 3 positive things. And I think that's already a piece. It's like, all right, we need to talk about it in a safe place. And then the teacher is the one who takes their gingerbread man and they sit in the middle of that fishbowl and they say, this is my student. And then they talk about the 3 strengths, and they talk about the 3 challenges. And then I would like to hear what you all think. And then people just start to chime in. Maybe they ask a question. Maybe they already come up with, oh, have you ever, thought about this? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So it really created this great dialogue. And, there's always strength in numbers. So having, a group of 5 to 6 or even 8 people around the fishbowl really is helpful. But you need time to be able to do that. And so we shifted from that approach because we were missing out on that kind of progress monitoring phase. And so what we developed was what we call our primary student support team meetings. And that includes the learning support team, maybe the counselor, the educational psychologist, the principals, the whole grade level, and then the ELA team and the learning support team, whoever the case manager is for that grade level. And we meet every 7 weeks. And so every 7 weeks, we started this during like planning time, and then we moved it to our Monday meeting slots. And so a Monday meeting, we have a whole staff meeting. So every 7 weeks, we try to make the student support team. And we're just really clear about the students that we're discussing. We're not talking about students that are already on individual learning plans. We're only discussing students, could be behavior, social emotional, or academic. But we're really clear on a protocol that we follow. I think this will be shared out, so I don't want to go through everything yet, because I'll kind of hit the different steps later. But I just kind of will backtrack a little bit, because I thought I didn't want to get too into this if you don't know too much about multi-tiered systems and supports. So MTSS, maybe you've heard of RTI before, or PBIS, but basically MTSS means multi-tiered systems of supports, and it includes like old research on response to intervention and positive behavior intervention and supports. And so it's kind of this like umbrella term for how do we create a tiered model of support to support students at different levels. So there's Nancy, will I be able to share out this PowerPoint? Because I was just thinking I actually do have links on this.
Yes, we can. So I also wrote to everyone saying for the takeaways, I'll PDF that and your slides, we can PDF and
Yeah,
we'll send it with the recording.
great. And, any questions that have come up so far that I need to answer? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, we're on mute. I think you get over that for a while. No, they're sharing their takeaways on the slide deck. So far, you're perfect. And
Perfect.
please let us know if you do have questions because Chad is here. Chad is here. I just love it. Chad's here.
Yeah, so I do have some different resources, so you can go in and obviously read up on whatever you want to read up on. But the PBIS World too, if you've never checked that out, that's great because I think there's often so many resources out there for academics, but we're like really searching for behavior. And so they kind of break it down into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type of it's the behaviors are becoming more intensified, and so they have tons of resources, tons of like observation sheets, so you can collect different observational data that you can look at, and it's just a great resource that I've always used. And so this is kind of how we've designed our MTSS system. So we've broken it down into a learning support model, and then we have a social emotional counseling model, and then we have a behavior model. And so what I mean by tiered levels of support is like, obviously you have MTSS, which is this big umbrella, and RTI and stuff, but you want to like take it and make it your own. So take that, whatever you think is great, and merge it into what you think works for your school. And so that base model is that classroom-based intervention. And so when you're thinking just statistically, that's what I was talking a little bit earlier, but that's, your 80 to 85%. The teacher should be able to meet all students' needs within that, 85% range, right? Just with their instruction. So that's good, planned, differentiated instruction. When we're thinking about it, 85% at least should be able to follow what the teacher is saying, and the instructions and what the teacher is teaching about. And then you have that, 10 to 15% that are going to need a little extra support. So what that extra support looks like might look like different from what you can offer at your school. But for us, we try to do targeted skills labs. So that could be 8 to 14 weeks. 14 weeks would be a whole semester. 8 weeks would be half a semester where we might do like a research-based intervention. So there's different literacy programs like, based on what you need. There's Edmark, there's WordShark, which is a computer-based one. There's tons of things. Orton Gillingham, we have someone that's trained in that will do Orton Gillingham trainings and stuff. But looking at a very intensive small group kind of targeted instruction for a certain period of time. But the most important part about that is that it's consistent. So you can't just do it once a week. Likely you need to do it over a certain week. And for math, we have a Numicon intervention program that's pretty aligned with the New Zealand math standards. And that's been really successful for our students because they've got different assessment tools that you can use for students that are in early learning all the way up to grade 5, called the JAM and the GLASS, and that gives you great data and very specific intervention program from there. If you had questions about that, I can put you in touch with someone that's really supported us on that. Then the next level would be, if students aren't making progress, so they've had some type of intervention, they're not making progress still, and that's gonna, that number is gonna go down. So it's 10 to 15%, and the students are gonna make progress after the intervention. It's gonna be even smaller. It might be 5% or less, and those are the students that are gonna be on an individual learning plan. So we would refer them after a period of time to our educational psychologist for a screening, and then we would develop an individual learning plan. And then for us at our school, we have students that we would say, right here, it looks like the 4, but we call it tier 3+1. And so that's the students who need even additional assistance. So maybe they need a one-to-one individual learning assistant or a shadow teacher. And so that's kind of how we frame our support within MTSS. Counseling is very similar, follows that same kind of trajectory. And then also for behavior, we also have, you know, for counseling interventions, behavior interventions. So we're looking at, you know, once a student is referred or talked about in the PSST, we move them to the intervention group. And then if they continue, if they, you know, if they do really well with the intervention, they go back into the classroom during that time. If they're not making the progress that, you know, was we were expecting, then it goes kind of to the next piece. And so just thinking about, like, if you're going to build that student support team for those type of meetings to figure out kind of that first and second tier, you want to think about, you know, who's going to be on your team, who's going to be at those meetings, when are those meetings going to be. And that's where it's really important that one of the principals is there, you know, whether you have a principal or an assistant principal or both, but they're the ones that can make that time. And I think that's really important, is you want to get whoever that is on board to know that this is really important stuff, that we're trying to provide preventative support so students aren't necessarily always going down the referral pathway. And your learning support, your counselor, if you have an educational psychologist, your ELA teacher, but also coming up with, you know, what's expected from that individual when they come to this type of meeting. What type of evidence are they kind of expected to bring to talk about that student? And I think that's really helpful, because, you know, you put out there like evidence and it's like the class teacher is like, oh my gosh, I have to do all of this. And it's like, if you have quite a wide support team, it's like, no, everyone can bring different pieces and talk about that student, you know, and their needs in different ways. It doesn't just fall on to the class teacher. And so I think, as I said was earlier, in this system, because we're not talking about kind of the tier 3 students, we're just talking about the students who don't have support and that we are wanting to support. Like, we feel like they need a support, whether it's based on data, maybe it's a gut feeling. We want to try to get rid of those eventually. But the kind of the things that we were talking about, you know, students that have maybe some complex needs, maybe they're social emotional, but they're not sure, like, I feel like they can learn, you know, they're able to learn at the grade level expectations, but sometimes I feel like their social emotional is getting in the way of it. So it's like, that could be a student to talk about. You know, if there's a group of students, because there's issues going across the whole grade level, maybe it's social emotional or behavior, let's talk about a group of students. It doesn't just have to be an individual student. Maybe there's a lack of progress over a period of time, because those are, you know, that's important questions to be asking in a meeting like this. You know, how long have you noticed a lack of progress as a new student? Depending on what type of external information you're receiving, you know, is there a difference between their developability and their academic achievements? Because that's always can be like a precursor for learning needs. And then what we say is, like, definitely our no-nos to talk about is any conversations about like less common concerns, like a medical diagnosis, like this type of student support team meeting, because they're, you know, we don't have a lot of time. We have to be really productive and effective on how we use that time. So these types of conversations require more time. That's a separate meeting. That's just between that teacher, whoever works with that child, you know, that information needs to go out in a different way. Let's say like it's inappropriate behavior that's not indicative of a learning support need or social emotional needs, you know, this could be dealt with in a different way. If it's constant and consistent over time, then that would be a different story. So conversations about students that already have an individual learning plan, it's like, no, we have set time to talk about those already, so it's not an ideal use of our time. And so, yeah, just some of the things to also help, you know, your external assessments, whatever you use. I did want to show you some like what we have, because this has also been a journey too. Now we have what we call like a data dashboard, which is pretty incredible. So you can see like the students, like their ELA status, or English language acquisition. You can see what type of progress they're making over time. So when we're talking about student, we can have this up on our whiteboard so we can see, you know, what's that progress look like. We can see on their external assessment how they did. Our internal assessment sheet, somebody will have that up. So we color code them from pre to post assessment. So it's really clear to identify what students aren't making the progress that we can see. And the teachers are all kind of on board with this now, you know, to get this progress sheet. It was like a little hard to get it over the line at first, but once everyone realized like, oh my gosh, this system makes it so much easier to really identify and pinpoint some students that might need intervention, whether that's just within the class or outside with learning support or something. It was really helpful. Open apply is something that like myself and the educational psychologist will always look at. So especially just to see, you know, how long has a student been at our school, to look at on here, there's like a confidential reference. If you have this, it's like an admissions tool. I don't know if your schools have used it, but it just has so much valid information. So just going back and like stuff that might have gotten missed when that student came in, that's really important. And then a part of that system that we have, so when we're talking about the students, we always have a note taker. And so this is the part where it's really important, because you want to build this in as a system that, you know, continues. So you put the students, the teams put their students' names on first after they really think about who do we want to talk about. And then they tick whether the student already has, you know, if they're intensive English language learners, if they're in the intermediate level, is this a learning support concern? Like for academics, is this a social emotional counseling concern, or is this a behavior concern? And then we put in the strengths and then the areas of concern on here. So when we go into that meeting, all this information is already in. So we're able to actually have a quick and efficient conversation. And then in the next 7 weeks, we're able to do a quick review of it and then talk about, you know, next steps.
Chad, what was the name of the math program, the math intervention program that you mentioned?
It's called Numicon. I should have put a picture of it, sorry, but it's this great concrete, it's like a, like if you would see dice, but you could like put your fingers through the holes of them so the students can actually feel the numbers and they can see them. Yeah, if you look it up, you'll be like, wow, I can't believe I've never thought about that. It's a really great program. And then, but the what's so great about the program is that they break it down into concrete, pictorial, abstract. And so what that means is that when students are learning through the math, whatever your math objective is, it should always start out concrete first. So you're playing with manipulatives. Then the next step is pictorial. So the students are able to draw that, whether that's symbols, whether that's pictures. And then the next step after that is abstract. So thinking about that in a number sentence, being able to do that mentally. So it just is a great program because it breaks it down into kind of like the 3 areas. And so you can see, all right, well, this child can always do it concrete, but he's never been able to get to the pictorial or the abstract. That's fine. We make sure that we also have concrete materials when he's doing the math, that type of math learning in the class.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions before it's already 10 after, Chad. I'm so sad. Where did the time go?
The time is going too quick.
It's going too quick. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we don't know. You let me know when you want me to create the rooms.
Okay, I've just got 2 more slides and then
perfect. I want to. Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is kind of the protocol that we use for like the first stage. So the first areas, we talk about strengths, areas of need, what evidence supports those areas of need, what are the strategies that are already tried. That's highly important to talk about, because you're deciding, you know, is this going to be an intervention that the teacher is doing with that student or that group of students in the class, or is this something that needs to be taken out and the students need to be doing with like a research-based type of intervention with the learning support team? So that's what you're kind of always juggling back and forth. And so maybe this teacher hasn't tried enough strategies. So then your action or your recommendation would be, we're going to try this and this strategy. when we meet in the next 7 weeks, we're going to review how the student's done with this. And here's something that you can bring to show how they're doing for the next meeting. So it's just really important that you have that kind of dialogue so the teacher knows exactly, they don't panic and say, I need to bring all of this evidence or something. Yeah, obviously having different types of roles are going to be really important for these meetings. It's going to be a little bit bumpy at the start until you really kind of iron out those protocols, making sure that people come in, they've filled out the document before they've come to the meeting. And those are the things that are really going to help. Okay, so now I think it's a good time for a little breakout room. I think maybe we could do 5 minutes. Maybe if we just put 3 people in a room so everyone kind of has a minute and a half. You're not going to have time to talk about all of the questions on the culture tree, but maybe you're already thinking about what's your hopes, what are your next steps, and this is something that you can share in your group.
Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. We know you had a brilliant conversation. Chad is going to have just a few more statements, and then we're going to open it up for everyone just to chat, say hello, and also share any takeaway that you might have had. So, Chad, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thank you. It's hard to break everything down and for such a big topic in a short amount of time. But I wanted to give you another couple ideas of something you could do. So maybe you're feeling like we're not ready for that at this point, but some other ways that you could do it. And so something that we've also initiated with some PLCs, so professional learning communities, and which has now navigated its way into peer learning opportunities. And so that professional learning community, I mean, they were really kind of developed, the research is about is more looking into student data. And so what I tried to say was that we don't necessarily need every PLC group to look at student data, but some of them will, some of that are really interested that are going to filter out, and you're going to have that kind of ripple effect where they're going to support other students. And so what I had the teachers do was come up with different ideas and topics. And, I said big ideas. And so everyone came up with big ideas, and then they voted on the top 3 that they were interested in. And then I put them all in mixed groups. So you could be a grade 5 teacher, the ELC and the ELA teacher. And then I said, all right, you have your topic. Now you have to narrow it down. So you have to set up, you have to do some research about it, and you need to come up with one manageable action that you can take. It does not have to be whole school, but it could be implementing a new strategy with your class, could be doing something with a student. And so we had some really incredible conversations. And then the teams documented this through like a PowerPoint slide. So every time we would meet, they would fill out the next thing. This is our target that we're going to do. We're going to try to implement this in some way, and then we're going to come back. And so this kind of builds that culture of collaboration and that type of dialogue and talking about students, in a positive way that really kind of builds on that MTSS framework. And so this continues on now. And so we have lots of teams that are like, oh, I really want to continue with my PLC, with my group. We're still, we want to try a new strategy. We still want to focus on literacy support, but we want to focus on this strategy now. And so they're going to continue with those groups this year. And this is something that sparked a new idea. And, teachers are always asking about, I would love to see from another teacher, because we all have different strengths. And like if you're working in a team, like so-and-so is really great at math, so-and-so is really great when they're doing mindfulness. Like I'd love to see that, but we don't have time. And so I found time in everyone's schedule. So they have 40 minutes per week where everyone can do one of the 4. So that could be peer observation, where they're picking a lesson that they want to see. It could be a team member, it could be a single subject, it could be seeing their class during art, or professional reading. This is something that I want to learn more about and professionally grow about. Sharing learning. So that means I'd like someone to come and see my class. I want to see them see my lesson, maybe give me some feedback. Or applying learning. So showing about how am I taking something that I've learned about, and this is what I'm doing to apply. And these are the type of sheets that we are kind of recording and documenting this on. But as I said, the PLC, this is kind of this has grown from that. So we started with these student support teams, then we started to go into PLCs, and now we're in these peer learning groups too during 40 minutes per week. And so we're creating this culture of how we talk about students, and it kind of builds on when you get that momentum going. It's just how can you continue to steer that in a positive way. And so that was it from me. I know I talked a lot about a lot of different things. So if you have any questions now, or if there's anything that you wanted to share from your breakout group, now's your time.
You know what I'll do? I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to stop the recording so people can share and just have that freedom. And if you can stop sharing your screen, and I'm going to stop recording.